all the things you said you'd hate. Now you're looking like it is too late, heading towards the borderline. And on the borderline, baby, gonna meet sometime. Blackbird singing that same old line.
All right, first off, Bill, you grew up in Asbury Park, New Jersey. Of course, great rock and roll place, a lot of history behind it. What was it like growing up there?
Well, it was kind of the beginning of the rock and roll era was happening. So there weren't many, you know, rock bands, or rock and roll was just kind of in its beginning day. And it was a resort town by the, you know, on the ocean. There was a bunch of little honky tonks and places like that, and kind of, you can imagine the 50s kind of New Jersey, American graffiti, and it was fun. And we decided to put a rock band together. And
did you always want to be a rock?
Always wanted to be it. Yeah.
Well, who were your early influences when you were growing up?
Oh God, well, Ray Charles was probably one. The Ventures was probably another. Dwayne Eddy was another. Paul Butterfield Band, all the different things in that time. And I put together a rock and roll band down there at the shore, and it was in such a beginning of the scene that I even had to go and buy banjo strings to put on my guitar, because they didn't make skinny guitar strings in those days. And we used to take amplifiers and poke holes in our speakers to get kind of a raspy sound. And I assembled a band. It was probably the first big rock and roll band, well, one of the first in Asbury Park at the Jersey Shore. We had the first rock record out on Kama Sutra Records in 1966, me and the guys. And it was myself, it was Danny Federici on keyboards, another bass player, Bill Wolf, another guy from New Jersey, and another drummer down there from the Jersey Shore. And that band eventually evolved into the foundation of basically what was the E Street Band.
You just told me that earlier. Explain that, how that all came.
Well, they've finally done a thing about it, and it's kind of funny that the press or anybody never really inquired about it, because sometimes when I did albums, you know, like Badlands and stuff, they always kind of gave that. I found myself and Springsteen in so many interviews together, and I was always taking kind of the, you know, the back seat, or I was taking the bad guy look or something, as if we had come along after him. And the truth of the matter was that myself, Gary Talent, Danny Federici, and Vinny Lopez, we had a band years prior to his coming on the scene. And we toured for the Electric Circus, played, worked at the Steve Paul scene, made records. I even talked David Sanchez's mother into letting David play rock and roll in Belmar. And finally, by the time I was 19 years old, I mean, we had already toured, we'd already made one record, already made an album that didn't get released, all of us. We were heavily involved in that, you know, the 60s New Jersey rock scene. Played the Steve Paul scene, Hendrix and Al Cooper and Janis Joplin and that whole thing. And I decided to move to Maine for a better lifestyle. And when I moved to Maine, the guitar player that replaced me in that entity, went a long way around, was Bruce.
That's just amazing. Yeah. You said it was documented. In what publication will that be?
Backstreet's magazine just did a book on the whole thing, and there's a writer that writes for Rolling Stone named Robert Santelli, and he just wrote a book. I probably shouldn't say the name of the book, but I think it's going to be called Streets of Tears, and he talks about it too. So our little family of people, they finally did kind of a family tree. It was me and Gary Talent and Danny Federici and David Sanchez and Vinny Lopez. All those guys played with me prior to.
And were you called Bill Chinnock back then? What was the band?
We were the Downtown Tangiers Rock and Rhythm and Blues Band, and we toured for the Electric Circus. I mean, we actually were all over the place. And then finally it became my name on the band, you know, Bill Chinnock Band. And when I left the band in its different shapes and forms, finally ended up being the core of Bruce's E Street Band. So. I think Badlands was probably the definitive album for the transition from New Jersey to Maine. It was a gutsy kind of street felt album that touched a lot of us. And I think after that, I think Dinosaur Heroes, I liked a whole bunch too. I felt that was strong too. Rock and Roll Cowboys after that, we had such a nemesis with that Bruce thing and I, that when I went down there and worked with Harold Bradley and Leon Russell, and we decided to do that because it just kind of broke. We felt it was a record that there was Leon with this thing. It kind of broke that stereotype. It wasn't much different than what Leon had done or Neil Young had done. It's just up in the Northeast, everyone shook their fists at me.
Neil Young even went country for a while, and you know, I mean, everyone has a chance to explore different avenues, but they really rejected it up here. There's some Bill Chinnock's country.
But see, I always look at the national thing. I mean, I look at that thing of having loyalty to the Northeast, but I also look at that thing whereby we want the records to be played in L.A., you know, as well as we want them to be played in Japan, and Rock and Roll Cowboys was probably, outside of the Northeast, one of my most successful albums. It got played on KDF in Nashville in the top 10. We beat out Van Halen for 3 years. I mean, it was a successful record. And after that, we did Modern Age, and at that point in time, I wasn't really.
You came back last winter. I saw you at Raoul's, and you just played last night, of course, at T-Birds. How do you view the crowd? Is it the same old crowd?
Well, I think the audience changes, but I think the same kind of bond is there. This is home to me. My mother lives in Falmouth. My sister lives in Yarmouth. Maine is my home. Even though I was born in Asbury Park or New Jersey, Newark by choice. I mean, by birth. I mean, this is my elected home. I see it. I see the people the same. I see the vehicle for everyone to get together and enjoy music is much more difficult now. You know, the whole society is more conservative. You know, the drinking laws have. I'm definitely not for someone crashing and killing somebody on the highway, but I'm also, too, in free society, there is risk. I mean, you can say, gosh, your car goes over 50. Let's make it 35, even safer. Next thing you know, when you walk down the street, better wear a helmet. We're all wearing helmets.
Life preserve is next.
In democracy, in free society, there is risk. I mean, I think there needs to be a better way to control it than to take out the nightlife and rock and roll, especially in the Northeast, where there's not you can't go to a Broadway show twice a week. You need to have that, and I think that when they legislated that stuff under the ground, they really hurt a large part of what the state of Maine did have as its best, I think, and it's all over the country, so it's not just here.
Right.
Yeah.
What about the crowd? Do they still come out, scream Badlands and Dime Store Heroes? Do they want to hear
They do.
these two great albums?
They want to hear them both. I've been teaching my new band everything, and they want to hear Big George Walker. And
Yeah.
I know. And we're doing them. We're learning all the stuff for everybody. So, I mean,
So it doesn't bother you to
doesn't.
keep it?
No way. No way. I'm here for them. So as long as they want.
Okay, how about Badlands? Okay, let's talk about that for a second.
Let's see. I haven't seen this in a while.
Okay, this is of course, this is the thing. I'll tell you my little story is I had the original, the black label and the pink back, and a friend of mine moved to California, decided that was going to be his one possession he was going to take of mine to go with him. So I lost that, so I ended up with the remix on Atlantic. Now, was that your best album in your mind?
Boy, you've asked a big question. I think the original Badlands was probably one of my best records. I think the one on Touched, on Mixed, on Standing in Front of the Thing.
Right.
I think Atlantic, what Atlantic did was when they took it off, and this is the same thing the band that I talk about continually in the bus too, is that they took the record off the radio to remix it. By the time it came off the thing, Bruce had released, his album was going to be entitled Badlands. He changed the title to Darkness on the Edge of Town, and off it came. And in that one little slot in Fate and in God's Time, our record was only able to get as far as New York to Maine, because that's where North Country Records had released it.
Right.
The rest of America heard his Badlands first. It's that I think Badlands was probably the definitive album for the transition from New Jersey to Maine. It was a gutsy kind of street felt album that ran out. Cohen asked me if I would, McDonald had left the Doobies and the Doobies were reforming. He asked me if I would consider joining and going out there to California working with the guys. So I went out to Northern California and stayed about 10 months and worked with the fellas in the Doobies. And then after that, I bought a farm back in Maine, decided to take some time off, and came back last year and spent maybe 6-7 months just looking at the snow And then I got a call to do this. Mick Ronson and I know who the guitarist Mick Ronson is. He's good. He played with David Bowie. He's a good player. We did some demos a couple of years ago that this one exec in Nashville heard and he liked a lot. And he called me up and he said to me, if I'd put a band together, kind of an American music band, a synthesis of what I do and a synthesis kind of Buffalo Springfield and the Doobies and the Eagles and the Stones and Creedence and Ry Cooder and all these things, he said he'd give us a real good record deal. And I thought about it for a while, flew back and forth, thought about it, mistrusting the whole thing. And I said, okay. I went back to Nashville and I put together the band that's here with me tonight, and we're signed together to the label, 3 of us as a band.
What, in your mind, if you can pinpoint it, your biggest moment in rock and roll so far? What's your greatest thrill? Who you've played with, maybe, or an album or something you've done?
Well, I think my career has been my career has been rich. I mean, I've had the good fortune to play with so many people. I mean, from Hendrix and Janis Joplin up through, Dave Sanborn and the girls from Sting's band, just the Doobies. I've been lucky enough to be in that little circle of people inside my thing. When Leonard Skinner came to Portland last year, I played the night with with those guys at the thing. They called me up on stage. So I don't think there's one moment where all of a sudden I said to myself, my God, the light's shining tonight. If I die tomorrow, it's okay. I think the thing which has probably touched me the deepest is the loyalty and the stuff in the Northeast. I mean, people have stayed with me and by me. So I come back home, I'll say, well, gosh, I've been away a couple of years. They're going to totally forget. And we'll have 400 or 500 people come to a place and sing along. Even the guys who haven't been with me before sing along the word to every song. And I think something like that, I mean, I'm the richest guy in the world. Springsteen, Bob, they might have more money. Yeah. And so we're going to do a press party at the Lone Star in New York and out in LA. We're going to shoot a video in March, all of us. And we're just kind of back home trying out some of the new stuff. And the new show is kind of a combination of high tech, because we've really stayed up with that, that modern technology of recording. So we're trying to encompass our high tech with our low tech and put it all together so that the stage show brings a lot of music out.
Okay, for the band, you played with Bill on Modern Age and the other ones, so you've known him for quite a while now.
Yeah, for quite a few years.
So he just came up and said, okay, we're going to start a new band, let's do it?
Yeah, more or less.
How about you guys?
Well, we knew people from back in our past, but we never knew each other because he worked with the Dukes, and I did Simmons' solo tour when the Dukes broke up, and he came down to a rehearsal when I was working with Artemis Pyle, the drummer for Leonard Skinner.
Sure.
And we just started talking and realized we knew all these same people. So, and he had this deal cooking under the fire, and he said, I'll call you. Well, a month, 2 months. I thought, well, this guy's out of my life.
Yeah.
And he called me, and we had to put this deal together. So, so a twist of fate, I think.
And how did you end up with this?
Well, this guy here, this is my little brother. When I got to Nashville, and maybe Harold Bradley, I don't know who Harold is, but Harold's a wonderful, wonderful man. He's been involved in the music scene. Him and Owen down there from years, from like Elvis through nowadays. They're part of the pioneer families of the Nashville music scene. He got me to Leon Russell, and Leon and I got along great, and I signed with his management company. We decided to cut an album, and we needed a drummer. And everyone told me about him, and he came in on our first series of stuff and played so good. We were friends from that day on.
And then I borrowed a whole bunch of money from him, so I'm still trying to
and yes, that's right. And it'll take several years before you can either.
That's what I thought was more the story. Don't borrow money from this guy. It's a loan shark.
So how long have you guys been together? When did you start working together as a band?
Well, we've worked together Steve and Roger, we worked together for 5 years. Rex and I have been together probably since last August or July. The band, Atlantic asked me to put this band together. Isn't it they heard the tape I did. Rick Blackburn, who was the previous president at CBS Nashville, even though when I was being squished, there's nothing he could do to help the squish, but he quit that. Now he's the head of Atlantic in Nashville, and so now he said, gosh, let me get Bill and we'll put this together. So I put it together, and we started as of last August. Roger's playing with us off and on, but he's basically working with the Polygram Act now out of Philadelphia. We're the band signed to the thing.
So you're just renting him?
I'm renting him for the weekend, that's right. Renting him.
But we're having a lovely time.
Yeah. Yeah.
They keep you from here north. We won't let you go any
That's
further
right.
south in the state of Maine.
That's right.
So what do you hope of the new album? I mean, what do you hope for your career in the new album? I mean, Atlantic, coming back to Atlantic, is that a twist of
Well,
fate for you?
I love Atlantic Records. I mean, let me say the thing is, I love Atlantic Records. Arif Martin and the family of people at Atlantic, it's like Virgin Records, one of the last few strongholds of a musical record label. The stuff that Dave Sanborn, the stuff that comes out of there is great. I hope though, music is a changing river. I mean, it just continually moves and changes, and now there's more of a thing in the country what they're calling American music, which is kind of what Tom Petty and the Eagles and Buffalo Springfield and Creedence and the Doobies, and there's a thread of something new happening right now, which is not like Motley Crue, and it's not like, you know, I gave my love a cherry. There's something in the middle, which is a music style that's born of this era. I mean, born of the 60s and the 70s and the 50s. And what they asked us to do is to put together an American music band, kind of what I do, plus bring to it what all the guys naturally do. And I have a lot of hope for it. I feel that the same way I felt in Asbury Park, when we were poking the holes in our speakers, we were doing something very new. When I came to the Northeast, we're on the edge of something very, very new. I feel now down in what we're doing in Nashville, and it's really not in there. We're based there because the label's there, but it's really it's a across the America deal. Whether I bought a warehouse in Biddeford or live there, I feel it's on that same cutting edge. You know, the guy from Robert Santelli from Rolling Stones said, I've always been a cutting edge kind of guy. Well, I feel we're on the cutting edge of something really good. And if they let us do what we organically do, it's an album I'll be real proud of. If they give us the freedom and they promote it and get it out the way it should be.
No more horns. Have you gone away from the horns?
That's right.
Altogether?
Oh, altogether. On this record, I played keyboards and syntax, that new thing I play now, and slide guitar and rhythm guitar, and sang the lead and wrote the songs. And Jesse played lead guitar and sang, and Steve played bass and sang, and Roger was busy doing his thing. He went to Philadelphia. And a guy named Craig Cramp, who's a good drummer, he did this stuff, and he played with Rod Stewart. He's an LA session guy that actually plays a lot. Roger and he play a lot alike. So, and it's done, and we're happy with it. Now it's in their hands. Now we've all taken it from our hands and we've handed it over and given it to them. What will happen from this point on is out of our control. Out of our control. Do you hear that? Out of our control.
So do you feel confident though this time that Atlantic's going to give you a real shot at it?
You know, something like that. We've told the boys now we feel good about it. I always have. I would like them to. And I think a couple of the songs, Thunder in the Valley especially, I think it's a kind of song that if it gets out across America for Farm Aid and just a lot of things, I think, you know, not just for the farmers, but I think you know, that Citizen Kane, we're losing control thing in America is coming in. Don Henley's involved in this stuff, you know, and I think a lot the same thing. I just think, you know, people need to have about as much individual freedom and individual right and voice as they can possibly have. And I hope some of the songs that we made actually get out there and get heard by people. I think it'll be, especially Thunder in the Valley, will be like Dime Store Heroes or like Badlands, will be a strong statement that...
Sounds good to me if they emulate those two songs.
That's what I think.
What are your feelings? Okay, you're saying a lot about this, the freedom. We're losing control in America. They're taking away a lot of our freedoms. You know, you were just mentioning that earlier. What do you guys feel about the fall of the Berlin Wall and all the socialist moves around the world?
I think we're in the most amazing era. The whole world, the media, you guys, what you guys are doing, you're making the earth a small town. Now I can say, what's the guy doing next door? When I say next door, we're talking about Bolivia. And to see the Berlin Wall come down in our lifetime, it's wonderful. It's a wonderful thing. We have songs we have written for that you know, we want to do.
Ties in with a lot of the music too.
Yeah, that's it. It's a universal. Colorless, I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's black, white, purple, green, French, Italian. It's all stupid stuff. It's all people on the same earth, you know, trying to be happy.
The miracle of television is what people realize.
You guys, that's
right.
Basically
people.
That's right.
Sure.
That's right.
But do you see the communist nations all falling and coming more our way, and see us as a nation going more their way with taking away some of our freedoms now?
Well, I think Eisenhower said it the best, man. I think in America what's happened is that we become too much of a corporate nation. We're too much controlled by who's driving a BMW and dictating big business. And I'm going to do this because this is going to make a profit. And I'm going to do this because, man, this is going to move me up the ladder. I think people just have to get back to the same values as trust, not lying, being honest, responsibility to their neighbors. Don't do well at the other guy's expense. I mean, don't do well at the other guy's expense. That's wrong out there, wrong. Be kind. That's the richest guy in the town is the guy.
Doing all the things you said you'd hate. Now you're looking like it is too late. Heading towards the borderline.